be safe to say that I have many passions and interests, but one of them that I have always loved to do is read. And I read pretty much everything. It's kind of just a random mix of whatever sparks my interest. But I like recording what I read in a meaningful way. This started when I first finished high school and I made the decision to read 22 books in 2022. And I got halfway through the year before I realized that I had met that goal because I wasn't keeping track of the books I was reading. And so from then on, I made a very strategic decision to be intentional, not in so much what I'm reading. I read for fun and the enjoyment of it, as well as like what I could learn from a book. But I wanted to record and signify, okay, I've read this book. What have I taken away from this book? Are there any quotes or passages that I really like? And I love to make little videos kind of capturing all the books that I read in a year. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any books to show you. One, because I'm currently not at home. I'm living away for 4 months and the only books that I do have here are ones that I haven't read yet. And I also tend to read very fast, particularly fictional books that I get drawn into. I read at least 10 books this year within a day. I will start reading at like 5 p.m. and just not stop until the book is done, which isn't great for my sleep, but what can you do? But that kind of means that I hear about a book, I'm like, oh cool, I really want to read that. I'll find it somewhere like on my public library and get the ebook if I can. Hopefully it's not too popular, and read it immediately. I also enjoy taking notes and quotes down from my books, which I have no problem doing on a physical book, but I like to then store it and collect it all together, like all the quotes from this book. And when you do it physically, you have to type them up, and that just takes more time and gets a little annoying. I'm also not afraid to DNF books, but it's not really conscious. Like I said, I read all the time, but I'm not a habitual reader. I'll just kind of forget that I've started that book, particularly if it's non-fiction and it's not capturing my attention, and I'll just wander off and start reading something else. So I should go back and look at all the books that I've half read and kind of abandoned or forgotten. I read books in a day because I have a very interesting emotional reaction to books, and they completely alter and shape my mood over what I'm reading. And so I need to read it and be finished with it so that I can process my emotions and get on with my life. This is what I experience when I'm watching TV shows and movies. I am on edge until I know that everything's okay. And so if I read fast and I get through the whole book, I can like, okay, now I know it's okay. Now I can go back and enjoy different sections of it. That's why I love fan fiction, to be honest, or even just like rereading sections of books, because now I'm not stressed and I can enjoy the beautiful prose more and the interactions between characters. Now, on that note, I reread quite a few books this year that I've read in the past, some that I shot through within a day, and so I just wanted to spend more time in the world, and others from my childhood that I kind of wanted to revisit for nostalgic reasons. So let's get into it. The first book that I read in 2024 is a book called This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is a romance that's told mostly between letters between two lovers on different sides of a time war. We've got red and blue, and they communicate across battlefields through letters in a really kind of fascinating way. There's definitely some beautiful prose in it. I mainly picked it up because I'd heard about it a lot and the cover looks beautiful, and I gave it about 4 stars. If it's anything really less than 2 stars, I'll just DNF. So most of them kind of clump around 3 or 4, and then I break it up into 4.5, 5, and then like golden. You have my heart, I don't care. If it's a shit book, I read you at a time when I needed you in my life. Next, I decided to start rereading all of the Harry Potter series. This was the series that first got me into reading back when I was about 9 or 10, and it'd been such a long time since I'd read them that I thought I should reread them and revisit that portion of my childhood. So I read the first 4 books kind of one after the other as I went along. Oh my god, love the 3rd book and the 3rd movie so much. It was definitely kind of a nostalgic joyride. I remember when I was younger, I had a lot of trouble falling asleep, And so to get my brain to turn off, I would put on the Stephen Fry audiobook of The Philosopher's Stone, and I would fall asleep to that. And so when I was rereading the book, I was like, oh my God, look, all those memories coming back. Just like, I remember the exact time and place where I was like reading a certain passage. I did hit a bit of a slump as I was trying to finish the series, but then we got to The Deathly Hallows, and I read that in a day. This is what I'm talking about. I sometimes have too much time on my hands, and I'll just sit and I'll spend the whole day reading. And honestly, it's amazing. When I mean books, I'm not talking like little novellas. I read something like The Deathly Hallows in a day, easily, like not unexpected. Let me rank out my Harry Potters, because not every book is the same. The series as a whole is in the 6-star category. It is, I cannot live without, everyone needs to read, amazing. But none of the books themselves make it to 6. They don't actually make it to 5. I have The Sorcerer's Stone, Prisoner of Azkaban, Half-Blood Prince, and Deathly Hallows all as like 4.5 star books. I love them, they're brilliant. Philosopher's Stone is so amazing as a children's book. Every word is considered. If you read it, it's really cut back, there's no fancy language, but she can let you imagine this massive world using a couple of words, which is amazing. And then the others, just stuff that happens and goes on, and like little moments that you're like, oh, that's so funny. They have to be good books. 4 category, we've got Chamber of Secrets, Order of the Phoenix. Is that 7? 4? And so when you have a series that is 4 stars and above, there's a reason it's a classic. There's a reason everyone loves Harry Potter. It's amazing. And it's not, it's more complex than people give it credit for. Like the whole people like wolfing, that's all true, like, Nazis, switching and, international race and religion, differences between young and born versus uncontrolled is all about. Then I read a book called Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I love Ali Hazelwood's books. They're just so easy to read. A lot of them are the same story in multiple shades of grey, which we love. I want to know what to expect when I go into a book all the time. It really calms my nerves down and I can enjoy it a lot more. But this was one of her YA books about chess, and I loved it up until the ending. It's about chess, hence the title. And she did so well at kind of capturing different chess moments, and it all builds up to the climax, and she just kind of cuts away from it. And I was so let down. I know it must be so hard to create that kind of pinnacle scene of like chess game, but I wanted it so badly and I was expecting it, and it was ripped out from underneath me. Check and Mate was also a 4-star book. Again, I did really enjoy it up until the ending, and it was fine. It was a fine ending. I was just a little let down. Next book I read in 2024 was a little cozy fantasy book called The House in the Cerulean Sea. I always try and say on the Cerulean Sea. I'm pretty sure it's in. It's a little bizarre, but adorable, and focuses around this chap who works for like the government kind of agency of this world, and he is tasked into looking into all these orphanages for magical children and deciding whether they're following protocol and stuff. It took me a while to read, not because it was very big, just because it just kind of drifted in and out of it, but it was a very cool concept, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read The Virgin Suicides, which my best friend, the one who I made the little miniature bookshelf for, she read last year, and she's been telling me ever since that I need to read it. It is, I can't describe it. Just a warning here, obviously the title is The Virgin Suicides, and so it does talk about suicide. It's told from these boys in the streets that live around the house, their perspective and their thoughts over these girls who keep dying. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think because my friend really recommended it to me to read as just a book that really left an impact on her. I had that in my mind going into it, and it wasn't that for me. So I don't know if I would have picked it up by myself. The next book I read was a series actually, and I decided to finally finish the Hunger Games series. I was a very emotional child. I still am a very emotional person. And so I had read the first Hunger Games, and then I finally read Mockingjay and Catching Fire. And I'm so glad I did. Obviously, I knew pretty much everything that happens, but all of these books, all of them are 5-star, 6-star books. They just need to be read. They are the new classic books that will be studied in class. They are To Kill a Mockingbird of their time. The first time I read To Kill a Mockingbird, it was relief that this was such a classic and that people were made to study it. And that's the same feeling I have towards Hunger Games, because she writes with such intention, and the whole series is a critique on political systems, acknowledgement of how humans are and how the world works in ways and what we are capable of as humans, and, you know, a warning at the same time. Just so real. Then I decided to make things a little lighter, and I was going on holiday. It's about halfway through the year at this point. So I read little short stories in a series called Loath to Love You by Ali Hazelwood again. I didn't like these anywhere near as much as all of her novels that I've read, but I think at this point I will read everything that Ali Hazelwood puts out. I have a book that I didn't know she'd written, I didn't even know it existed, that needs to go on my TBR for this year immediately. I love her books. We'll just put that to the side. It was like a 2.5 star read. Next, I read my first memoir. I normally read a really diverse array of books, lots of memoirs and self-helps, books about plants and wanderings of people through the countryside, as well as like my high fantasy and my romances and fictional books. I'm normally all over the place, but this year, I guess because I was reading these series, 7-book series, 3-book series, I read a lot more fiction than I normally do, which is cool. But the first kind of non-fiction book I read was a memoir, Becoming, by Michelle Obama. Fascinating to learn in her life from when she was a child all the way up to being first woman of America. First woman? Kind of sad. What a world and look into her life. I think I gave her book 3 stars. And one of my favorite quotes from the book, which I do relate to, is Michelle talking about her husband, Barack Obama. And she says, "Barack, I've come to understand, is the sort of person who needs a hole. A closed-off little warren where he can read and write undisturbed." And I remember reading that and thinking, I want a warren immediately. How can I make one? I just need my little corner, cozy corner to sit and read my books and write and journal and get all my thoughts out and not be disturbed. Then I was on holiday, so I was just reading some fun books. I read Not in Love, another Ali Hazelwood book. I only gave this one 3 stars. Then I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. It's the first book of hers that I've read. Wasn't my kind of vibe. Another 3-star book. But let me share a quote for you from the book. "That's the thing about being an adult, standing beside your childhood race car bed. Time collapses, and instead of the version of you you've built from scratch, you're the hack-eyed drafts that came before, all at once." So even books that don't leave an impression on me so much, there are just single lines that I like to extract from them and collate and reflect on from time to time and be like, wow, I did not know the English language could do that. How do I resonate so strongly with those words on a page? The next book I read was The Kiss Quotient, and I gave this 2 stars. I think I was very close to quitting it, but I made it all the way through in the end. I read a non-fiction book called The Cash Flow Quadrant, which is by the same author as Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it was fascinating. I love reading all about money and how the world works in terms of finances. Always riveting stuff, like read The Psychology of Money, a classic, a bunch of those books like that. And this was another one in that same vein. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was good. It was a way to think. It's all about network marketing, which I have interesting opinions on because it can be a lot of scam and cult-like in some cases. Then I started joining book clubs. I've never been a part of a book club before, and now I'm part of 3. This one, my friends, they already had it going and they invited me to join, and it's all just like silly romancy love stories. And so the first book for the book club that I read was a story called A Novel Love Story. It was so cute and funny. I think I gave it about 3 stars. It kind of takes place with this girl. She accidentally stumbles into the world of her favourite romance story. Unfortunately, I never actually made it for the book club. And then the subsequent next 3 months of the book club, I was also unavailable. The one time I finally could go, I didn't read the book, which was, to be fair, the right decision, because we just decided as a group that we wanted to go line dancing for fun, and so we chose a Western romance to go along with that, and let's just say it wasn't great, so I didn't read it anyway. But it was a fun read, I'm sure, and we had fun line dancing together. So I've got that book. The next book is a book that I've been trying to read for 5 years. I picked it up once. I read a couple pages and I was like, I can't. And finally I decided that this was the year. You see, this book was given to me for my 16th birthday by a friend, and they wrote in the cover, "From one romantic to another, the greatest love story ever told." The book, the classic, the Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights. After a while, I did get into the old language of it. I have very strong issues with one particular character, uncivilized accent, and Emily Bronte is written in that, so you can't really understand what he says, which I guess is the point. It's kind of cool. Frustrated me at some points. But aside from that, the greatest love story? I'm sorry. Literally the whole premise of the book is where two people make each other worse, and as a result, destroy the lives of everyone around us, of the people that fall in love with us, of the children we have, of the children other people have. We're just gonna disintegrate and destroy it all because we love each other. If that's your understanding of great love. Okay. I barely got through this book. The only reason I didn't put it down was I was determined to finish it. I gave Wuthering Heights 2 stars. It fits in that time period of 200 years ago when it was written. Then I listened to a completely different kind of book, an audiobook. I was working at the time and I was teaching this boy to read, and we were listening to Holes, which is a book that I read in year 4 or year 5, and this boy was also in that year 4, year 5 age group. So I read this in primary school. It's such a fun read. I gave it 4 stars, and basically this boy, he's got a bunch of bad luck, and he accidentally gets accused of stealing a pair of shoes. He didn't steal them. But anyway, he gets sent to this working summer camp kind of vibe, where it's not, but it's called Camp Green Lake, and it's basically to instill hard work into them. They have to dig holes. It's like a kid version of what The Mummy, the movie, is to me. It's a horror, it's a romance, it's a comedy, it's a historical film all wrapped in one. This is what Holes is like for a kid's book. And it also has a movie with 15-year-old Shia LaBeouf in it. So it was very nostalgic and very fun to reread this year. Next, I read Pride and Prejudice. I'm like 90% sure I read Pride and Prejudice before, like a year or 2 ago, but I don't have it recorded anywhere because I read it on my phone. I didn't have a physical book. Well, I gave my physical book to my friend. And so I was just like, I'm gonna reread it or read it again. I don't actually know. I know the story so well inside and out. I know what happens in the book versus the movies and the miniseries because it's Pride and Prejudice. It is the greatest love story ever told. I'm sorry, my friend. Wuthering Heights. Take my heart out and put it in a book and you have Pride and Prejudice. So I listened to it in an audiobook over the course of a day. So much fun. I love that book. 5 out of 5 star book. And then finally, another book that I've been planning to read for a long, long time. The Way of Kings by Brendan Sanderson. This is a series that literally just concluded a week ago. The final book in this fantasy series just came out, Wind of Truth. I'm still only 1 book and 2 pages into the series because it is a beast of a book. I did read it pretty fast, but then I decided to read about 15 other books in between. And now at the beginning of this new year, in 2025, I have started reading the rest of the series. The Way of Kings had so many amazing quotes and lines. I highlighted everything. Going in my log of amazing quotes. I really enjoyed the book. Fantasy, epic fantasy, it's a completely different world. We're not on Earth anymore. We're not anywhere in our solar system or universe, probably. It's in the Cosmere, which is Brendan Sanderson's universe that he's created, and all of his works kind of interlink into that universe. And The Way of Kings is one of his most prominent series. It's taken him 20 years to complete. And you follow a multitude of characters, which is what normally happens in a fantasy, which I did find annoying at times because you get so invested in what's happening with a particular character. and it cuts away and you don't get back to them for like 200 pages. My other issue is that I read this on my Kindle, which means I have no idea how to pronounce any of the names. Kaladin, I know that one. I loved him for a period of time. He's like an Aragorn character in my head. There are 3 potentially Aragorn characters in this series so far. Kaladin at this moment, God. But from conversations with my friend, I'm expecting that he might fall off the pedestal and just nose plant into the ocean. Icarus, falling from the sky. So my heart's a little reserved. So I'm 1 book in. We'll see how the rest of the series goes. 4.5 stars, 5-star book, amazing. Great fantasy book. I next read a little series that is also finally completing its trilogy this month, and I'm so excited because these 2 books I both read in a day each, and I'm desperate for the 3rd one to come out. This is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and Emily Wilde's Map of Lost Lands. This is an adorable fantasy book that kind of takes place in the real world and half in like fairyland, or like, it's just so cool. You follow this character. She studies fairies for a living and it's her passion. She's obsessed. That's kind of all she does. And she goes north towards like Lapland kind of vibe, like islands in the like Arctic archipelago, to study these fairies that live up there. And she's creating an encyclopedia of all the fairies, but it's kind of like an enemies to lovers. Not really, but like she has a rival academically, and who's also kind of her friend and her mentor in the academic realm, and he decides to just invite himself along onto her research program. She's such a strong character as well. She's like, this is me, I know what I'm doing, trust me on this, I've got this, I'm fine. And there are just some really cute, funny quotes, a couple that I'm going to read to you because they're just cute and funny. Again, it's all about fairies. So they gather up their footprints and carry them on their backs, which, just imagine, you know, they're walking along, they're picking up their little footprints in the snow and they're just putting them in their backpack. Adorable. And then this quote here really hits hard to me because I am an explorer at heart. If there's one word to define me, I like defining myself by the word explorer. I've been doing it since I was 12 and I graduated primary school, and we were asked what we wanted to be in life, and I said explorer because I know that doesn't want to change. I can explore books and different realms, different countries and worlds and foods and music and everything in between. I'm an explorer. So here's the quote. I don't know, I answered honestly. Intellectual curiosity? I'm an explorer, when I can't say names. Wendell. I might call myself a scientist, but that is the heart of it. I wish to know the unknowable, to see what no mortal has seen. To, how does Labelle put it? To peel back the carpeting of the world and tumble into the stars. With a writing like that, how can I not read a book in a day? And how can I not love it? Next, we have another series that isn't really a series, but they were all kind of connected. It's the Icebreaker series. We've got Icebreaker, Wildfire, and Daydream. Now, Icebreaker is very, very popular BookTok book. Unfortunately, it's very spicy. Lots and lots of spice scenes. More spice than plot. But the characters are very cool, and I am an ice skater. I did synchronized ice skating for all of my teen years, so it was kind of like funny to like see all these things like interconnecting with skating and ice hockey. I gave it 3 stars. It's such a popular BookTok book. I was like, what's the hype about? And I enjoyed it enough to read the next book in this series, which was called Wildfire. And I also gave this book 3 stars. This book follows another character from the friend group of the first book, and it's their love story. And they're camp counselors, and it's their romance, and there's like, the spice has been turned down a notch. I like that a little bit more. And then we got to Daydream, which is a boy, Henry, in the friend group, his turn for his love story. And he is on the spectrum in some degree, and it's about him falling in love and finding love. And I loved that book. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed that one more than the others. The others I enjoyed, but Daydream, it was the best out of the series, and technically it's the 3rd in the book series, but they don't really have to be read in order. They all kind of get mentioned, each other's books, but chronologically in time, Icebreaker, Wildfire, Daydream. And in between that, I read a non-fiction book for my second book club that I'm now part of. And this is a non-fiction book club all about like improving yourself and getting 1 degree better. And the first book is Attached. So it's all about different attachment styles. It's been very popular in the past, anxious, avoidant, and secure attachment, how that impacts your relationships and what potentially you are. I do think I have come to the conclusion that I'm quite avoidant, which is probably why I have never been in a really romantic situation in my life, because I tend to avoid it like the plague. But I now am aware of that fact and can process my emotions a bit more. That book was another 3-star book. I felt like I feel like it was only for people with an anxious attachment style. I mean, seriously, it did feel like they were constantly attacking avoidant people and why anxious people always feel insecure, where I'm like, it's a fear response. I need you to emphasize that more. They're not being mean or manipulative by leading you on in a way. They're too scared to get close to you because they're trying to protect their heart a bit. Like, I don't know. It was fun discussing the book at the book club though, and unfortunately I haven't been able to attend the next 2 books, but I have read them. So the next book I read was the start of a series that I'm probably not going to continue. The Throne of Glass, another massively popular book. I read The Throne of Glass, the first book in a series, in a day. I started reading at 5 p.m. and I finished sometime around 11 p.m, which is a pretty good span of time to read a book in. It's a YA novel, follows the path of a girl. She's an accomplished assassin. She was caught or betrayed, and then she gets pulled out of the mines after a year and basically hired, or they want to hire her to be an assassin, but it's never that simple. She's got to prove that she's worthy of being hired. I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it. I give it 3 stars. I don't get the hype around the series. Maybe it gets better. And then I came up here and I have a lot of free time while I'm working up here. So I've been reading books, and I read 4 books over the course of 2 weeks. And I read a little short book called Diddley Squat, Home to Roost by Jeremy Clarkson. It's a non-fiction book all about his hassles as a farmer now that he's not so much a journalist and race car enthusiast, even though he will always be. But it just takes his columns that he's written for a particular newspaper and compiles it together over the course of like a year and a half or so. All the struggles he experiences with being a farmer in Britain. I got a book for my birthday as well called Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and it's a translation work from Japanese. I would give it about 4 stars, and it turns out that it was originally a stage play, and that makes so much more sense. I was like halfway through the book and I was like, okay, if I picture this as like a play happening on stage in Japan, the writing style makes so much more sense. But basically there's this cafe in Tokyo where if you sit in one particular seat, you can be transported back in time to the cafe, but you must remain in the chair you're sitting in, and you must finish the coffee that pours you, that takes you back, before it gets cold. And it follows these 4 different characters, and their lives are all kind of intertwined but also separate, and the different reasons that they want to go back to the past, and the people they want to talk to, things they want to lay to rest, and the connections they want to make. And it was a cool read that my friend just got me for my birthday, and it has a really beautiful cover, and so I read it immediately because that's the kind thing to do. And then I read a book called Solo, and it's all about long distance running. It's a memoir in some essence, or kind of just a recollection of her expeditions. Jenny is an avid runner. She loves long distance running, and she decides to become the first person to traverse a mountain range on every continent, which involved running for 20 days or so over these mountain ranges. She starts in Kazakhstan, I believe. The next place is Morocco, and she does the Canadian Rockies, where she's from, and the ranges in New Zealand. And it's just her kind of play-by-play of all that happens over each of these traverses and hikes and runs across these mountain ranges. There's some beautiful quotes about nature and finding yourself through running, the ability to just endure, but a lot of it kind of focuses on the negativities that come with being a solo female in different parts of the world. every moment, particularly in one section of the book in Morocco, which is known for solo female travelers can feel quite like a second-class citizen there, because the women there are often treated like second-class citizens. You can't drink, you can't go out and eat in a cafe because that's only for the men to do. But every moment just kept coming back. I did notice that there were quite a few times where people just underestimated her because she was a woman in some regard, but I feel like she kind of comes across that she took it the wrong way. Some situations, like that really cuts you to the core in terms of demoralizing, like they think of this because I'm a woman. There's that situation which I get and resonate to so profoundly, but then there's this other situation where it's just surprise, you know? They're just surprised that you're here alone running through mountains where no one even goes normally. It's just, you are doing it, you're a woman, okay, sure, you know? It's just surprise. And from there, I started reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, but I never got around to finishing it in 2024. I just finished it yesterday, so it will end up in my 2025 roundup of all the books I read. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me ramble. This is all the books I read in 2024, a little place for me to collect them, and I just love reading in every form. I've probably read more than double the amount of books on here just on my phone in fan fiction over the course of this year. I'm just saying, there's something about like rereading your favorite stories but with like slight variations or like changes that are so comforting. Again, as a person who gets emotionally stressed out, it's just a nice way to relax. It's like watching the same episodes of Friends again. I read around 33, 34 books this year, but I do read almost constantly. So I hope there are some books that you want to read now, have been inspired to read. I'll see you next time for another random video about probably something completely different. See you later.